with my colleagues from the Arctic Council Secretariat and the Arctic Council to bring us together here tonight to talk about how local community and local input can be worked into the work of the Arctic Council is a real pleasure for me. We have a very, very busy schedule for the next 90 minutes, and I know we're all rushing off to various activities tonight, so thank you all for being here with us. We have two very special guests to kick us off tonight. We have two state secretaries in the room. Thank you both for coming. And to kick us off, I'd like to welcome the State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Maria Vartaressian. Maria.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good evening, friends. My dear colleague, Sigrun, nice to meet you here once more. Mayors, Arctic friends. It's wonderful to be here, and I've said this to many Arctic friends throughout the day, but I'm truly happy to be here. And it took me 7 flights, 7 attempts to actually reach the Arctic, but it takes a lot to keep me away from Tromsø. I'm happy to be here because this is a city where I've studied, lived, worked, and really true pleasure that we are able to connect the whole Arctic family here. And Sigrun and I, we're Arctic partners. We're friends in the government. We're also trying to work as closely as we can together to figure out the way forward. Because, friends, as you know, we're currently standing at a crossroads in time. The world, Europe, the Arctic, many things are changing. Climate change is affecting the way our communities are developing. Well, the fact that the extreme weather prevented many of the flights, many of the participants to actually come to Arctic frontiers is a very concrete example of that. Also, for the past 2 years, we have been living in a time which has marked a shift in Arctic relations, a watershed moment for Arctic cooperation. And for the Norwegian foreign policy perspective from all of this, I've often reflected on the fact that how closely interlinked foreign policy and domestic policy is when we're moving further north, because it's really flowing into each other. And the shift we're currently in, where geopolitics, although we have been living in times with Arctic exceptionalism, we now see that geopolitics are very much affecting the way we are cooperating in the Arctic. It demands a lot from us. It demands a lot from politicians for moving forward and preserving our core values as we do so. To preserve the structures which were formed in the early 90s, such as the Arctic Council, making sure it survives, to represent the circumpolar perspective of issues which are common for all Arctic countries, at the same time as we know that we cannot move on in a business as usual way, because it is not business as usual times. And in a way which we are also working to supplement Arctic Council with making Nordic cooperation stronger, more vibrant, in order to tackle the common challenges of the Arctic, of the Northern Nordic, and also try to reap the benefits of the green transition. There is a lot we can cooperate on, but the most important thing is to have always the human dimension in it, because it really, nothing of this matters if we do not think about how our politics are affecting the people living in the Arctic. And that sense of Arctic togetherness in the Northern Nordic and among the Arctic people is something worth truly preserving. And it really, really is up to us now, currently at this crossroad, to define how to move forward. And so, friends, I will soon give a word to my good colleague Sigrun, but please let us all join forces in thinking creatively about what do we have now that we need to preserve for the future, for future generations. How can we develop new, thriving green businesses based on the best of what we have? How can we adapt to the climate change, which is highly affecting our societies, which is challenging the infrastructure, the way we live, our livelihoods, in a way which makes a sustainable future possible? So with those words, which is very much a broad geopolitical perspective of that, I want to give the floor to my good colleague, Sigrun. But perhaps, Patty, you want to do it yourself. So thank you so much for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think you've really hit on this key theme that we've come to call our session, which is actually living in a changing Arctic, because it is about the people. And I was just at another session before, and someone made the very good point that actually human security is really about the people, and that security in general is about the people. So I'd like to pass the floor over to you, Sigrun, State Secretary for, and I left my notes on the ground, so maybe you can tell, it's a very long, the Ministry of Regional...
Local government and regional
and
development.
Local government and development. So
yeah.
Please, Sigrun, the stage is yours.
Thank you. All right. Yesterday I was bragging, or 2 days ago I was bragging about me living in the north, so I would get here in time and I could do some chores for the other departments and other ministries here. But as you know, the weather is quite demanding, so all the buses were standing. So this is also my first day on Arctic Frontiers. I used to be a mayor in a small municipality named Salangen, 3 hours drive south of Tromsø. So I'm a proud citizen of Troms. And dear all, I'm so pleased to be here with you this evening. As you know, foreign and domestic policy really converge in the Arctic. And I'm happy that we are working closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and with regional and local actors to ensure that our efforts are well coordinated. And on my part, you know, Maria, she presented the framework of the development in the north. And I will briefly mention a few perspectives from the Norwegian regional and domestic policy. As you know, these are increasingly important in the Arctic. I would say that the people in the north priority of the Norwegian chairship is close to my heart. The Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development is responsible for coordinating rural and regional policy, regional and local cooperation across borders in the High North, and for coordinating the domestic part of government's Arctic policy. We are also responsible for financing local governments and administration, as well as Sami and minority affairs. We support and appreciate local and regional political dialogue and on-the-ground cooperation across the Arctic borders. The Arctic Mayors Forum will be one important actor as we see it. I would also like to mention the new possibilities opening in the Norwegian Barents Secretariat. They will, as from this year, facilitate more cooperation between Norwegian local, regional and indigenous actors and actors in the Nordic, Barents and Arctic area. Furthermore, through the EU Interreg programs in the north, we give local North Norwegians and Sami partners possibility to cooperate with partners in most Arctic countries to share knowledge and contribute to solve concrete challenges on the ground. Attractive local communities, cities and regions are crucial for future development, security and preparedness in the Arctic. And we are relentlessly working across sectors and cooperating with local and regional authorities to ensure that our northern regions are attractive places to live, work, study and raise families in. In that respect, we are especially concerned about the youth engagement and participation in policy development in the north. And important keywords for our work and for us are education and research, meeting the demand for skilled labor, attractive local communities, green industry, and infrastructure. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation on the engagement of local actors and youth and the Arctic Mayors Forum concerning the challenges in the Arctic and the contributions to the Norwegian chairship of the Arctic Council. And then I wish you luck. I wish you very much luck for this evening, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you both being here. And please stay as long as you can and engage in the conversation. If you want to keep your mics on and just jump into the conversation, that's also allowed. So I would like to now invite our first sort of set of speakers. The way we're going to do this evening, it is sort of a town hall setting. So I would like to encourage you all to take some notes and jot down any questions that you might have as we go along. But the run of show is going to go like this. I'm going to invite Morten and also Sarah Cox, the Canadian head of delegation for the Sustainable Development Working Group, and the chair of the Emergency Prevention, Preparedness and Response Working Group, Ole Christian Bjørkmo, to the stage. We're going to give you a little bit of a scene setter from the Arctic Council, the Arctic Mayors Forum, and 2 working groups. And then we're going to have some mayors come on the stage, have a bit of a discussion, and then we're going to open it up to everybody. So please, Morten, Ole Christian, Sarah, join me on the stage. So, Morten, I'm going to start with you, and I think that it would be really great if you could just share with us some opening remarks that you have about the Norwegian chairship priorities and how we might work together as strategic partners moving forward. Over to you.
Thanks, Patty, and dear Arctic friends. Pleasure to be here, and thank you to you and the organization for co-hosting this together with us from the Norwegian chairship and representatives of the 2 working groups in the Arctic Council, SCWG and EPPR. The Arctic Council was established as a forum to promote cooperation, coordination, and interaction among Arctic states with the involvement of Arctic indigenous peoples and other Arctic inhabitants on common Arctic issues. From last year, May last year, when we took over a chair, and until May 2025, Norway chairs the Arctic Council. And it's a critical time in Arctic cooperation. And the overall objective for Norway is to promote, through our chairship, promote stability and constructive cooperation. Our chairship program has 4 main priorities: oceans, climate and environment, sustainable economic development, and people in the north, as also the State Secretary, one of the State Secretary, reflected on. Through these priorities, we strive to support the development of resilient, diverse, and inclusive Arctic communities that are attractive places to live in for everyone. Arctic indigenous peoples have a unique role as permanent participants in the Arctic Council. I think it's difficult to compare with any other international organization. This setup with states and indigenous peoples at the same table at every level is unique. To this end, closer cooperation with Arctic communities through close collaboration with the Arctic Mayors Forum is of high importance during our chairship. It is important that local communities are involved in decisions that impact them. The Arctic Mayors Forum is a key platform to strengthen local cooperation and facilitate their participation in Arctic development and policymaking. Arctic youth and indigenous peoples are cross-cutting priorities through our chairship. We need to meaningfully engage with young people and Arctic indigenous peoples as they experience Arctic changes most immediately and bear significant consequences. Their voices are crucial in providing the Arctic Council with knowledge and lived experiences of local people. Under the people in the North priority, we have several key focus areas, including gender and inclusion, public health, medical preparedness, and cultural heritage. Arctic communities are seeing their realities change quickly between extreme climate events, increasing human activities in the high north, and more emergency preparedness is becoming increasingly top of mind. To this end, the Norwegian chairship is happy to announce the International Arctic Emergency Prevention, Preparedness and Response Conference, it's a long title, which will take place from 18th to 20th of March next year in Bodø, in Norway. We are organizing this conference in close partnership with our EPPR working group, and it will be the first conference of this kind, and more details on the conference will be released soon, and I hope to see many of you in Bodø March next year. As the Arctic environment changes, so do livelihoods, cultures, traditions, languages, and identities of indigenous peoples and other communities. Sharing knowledge and building cooperation on the local, regional, and circumpolar level is crucial for ensuring a vibrant, sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Morten. And I think that when I listen to the priorities of the Norwegian chairship and indeed the work of the Arctic Council, I see a lot of similarities and priorities in the Arctic Mayors Forum. So just for those of you who haven't heard my spiel sometime this week, the Arctic Mayors Forum is a pan-Arctic organization. We too have representation from the seven like-minded Arctic states. We have suspended our cooperation with Russia for the time being, at least. And until now, there has been no formalized structure to be an interlocutor for local communities with other levels of governance, and that's really what we aim to do. Currently, we have 17 members in the Arctic Mayors Forum, and we are actively recruiting more members. We really want to become, the body in the Arctic governance structure that really represents Arctic communities. And that includes small communities and large communities and indigenous communities. Our tent is big, and we can welcome in the people living in Arctic communities. So just some fun facts I'd like to share. We currently represent over 1.1 million people who identify as Northern or Arctic. I think that's really important to note. And that our members are incredibly active in a lot of different projects. And we have these partnerships between our members. So, we don't say, oh, you have to cooperate in this way, but people, our mayors can come together and cooperate under different projects and different schemes. And, we also have stakeholder relationships with over 20 organizations, including the Arctic Council and many, many more. But I really want to get into the nuts and bolts of this. So I'm first going to turn to Ole Christian for our first case study of the day. So what we've asked is that Ole Christian and Sarah present a case study for us to kind of look at and see where we could use our cooperation to actually bring local communities and municipalities into the work of the council. So Ole Christian, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's great to share a stage with you again, having worked with you for a long time. So over to you to talk about some EPPR cases.
Thank you, Patty, and Arctic friends. Great to be here and great to see all of you. Talking about case study and incident, I would first like to highlight to avoid incident. That's the most important. We learned this morning about wildland fires and what the cultural burning could affect or reduce the wildland fires. That is a good example and a bridge also to communities about avoid the really disasters. I'm working in the Norwegian Coastal Administration, and I look into the log because of we are looking into ships incident, and we had a bad weather the last days, and I look into the log, is it any series going on in this area? It's nothing. And that's because of prevention. That the ships, they're going to the quay, they are, they take, do preventive measures to avoid incidents, and that's good. That is how it should be. But nevertheless, even we have prevention, we have seen that incident might occur, and I have just some examples, and then I will also line up some what-if examples. One eye-opener was in September last year in Greenland, Western Greenland, a very remote area, where a cruise ship vessel, quite small one, about 200 passengers, grounded in a remote bay in Western Greenland. Luckily, it was no injuries, it was no oil spill, but we learned that the response resources was very far away because of the remoteness. So that is one example, and I will come back to that. Earlier this month, we have a search and rescue expert group within EPPR. The EPPR SAR expert group share informed me about an aircraft that crashed in remote Canada. 19 passengers, and if I understood, all unfortunately dead. But if there were some survivors, how to really take care of them in such a remote area in the middle of the winter, most likely the first responders would be those living in the area, the small communities, with those challenges that they will see. I referred to the wildland fires in Canada last summer. We had also wildland fires in Russia in 2021 with quite extreme results we learned this morning, but also the evacuation of the town of Yellowknife, and it might also, I assume it affected a lot of those people that live in that area. It's a huge area, is my understanding. And here in Norway, that was one incident I was involved in. We had a Northguider incident. It was a fishing vessel that was doing fishery on 80 degrees north in about 30th of December. It's totally dark. They grounded on 80 degrees north, and it was a quite extreme rescue operation, and just within the limit of the possibility, and all crew were rescued. But to handle the vessel afterwards, that is an area without any communities, so they were not affected. But the operation to handle the ship took 2 years to really clean up the area, etc. So that also indicates the challenges with remoteness, ice, whatever that might be in such areas. And I think worldwide we saw the Viking Sky incident. That was not in the Arctic, it was in a well-populated area in Norway with about 1,400 passengers. In a quite heavy storm, and it was an evacuation of about 500. That it was in a well-populated area. What if that incident happened, let's say, in the northern Norway, or in the Svalbard area, or in other places in the Arctic? And I saw in the news this week, the largest cruise vessel in the world, it was just launched, 7,300 passengers, more than 2,500 crew. That's a town floating. And what if that vessel really grounded? I don't know whether they will sail there, but nevertheless, it's really something you couldn't imagine. So all of this, it's a possibility that if you have incident, it could be all kind of incident, the response capability and evacuation destination will be most likely a small community. if there are small communities in the neighborhood. Those people that live there will be affected, maybe as first responder with those challenges, but also the community itself. Let's say if you have a small community and you have just a few hundred passengers, for example, or people coming in to your community, that is definitely will be challenging, both for those people that lives in the area, but also the passengers or those people evacuated, and for example. If the people evacuated need health care, how to handle that? It will be physical, people are physically damaged, and of course also mental health. There are problems, what they have seen, maybe people died around them, whatever, that they need help. And does the small communities have that capacity? Most likely not. So all of this is challenging. And if you have an incident, ship's incident, with a follow-up of an oil spill, for example, people that lives in that area, they will maybe have the food security destroyed. They are fishing, they do hunting, whatever. And what about that? And there might be cultural heritage affected. So there are many potential problems that might occur when we have incident. It could be small incident, and of course this really worst case that we even would like to think about. So I think there are a lot of challenges definitely for us, and those incidents might also take a lot of time. I mentioned 2 years to remove not a small fishing boat, but a fishing boat, because of the area. So yeah, I think that is also a bridge to what we will learn more about later on. But I think there's not enough examples of situations that affect the local communities and might affect the local communities if we have also more serious incidents. Thank you.
Thanks, Ole Christian. And we're going to hear from two of our mayors, one from Luleå and one from Canada, and in just a few minutes, and also bring up Anja Maria from the Sami Council. And preparedness is really key to what municipalities do in many countries across the Arctic region. And you mentioned something that's a perfect segue into what we're going to have Sarah speak about, which is mental health and well-being. And when there are additional stresses put on communities, of course, we know that impacts the local communities. So, Sarah, please let us in on a project that I know that is near and dear to your heart. Yeah. I'm going to try to pronounce it better than I did when I was talking to you earlier. Local to global, yeah. And this has been a long-running project, and yeah. I think I'm really excited to hear about it, and also just to say that when Arctic mayors met in October around Arctic Circle, we actually decided that our strategic priority for the next 3 years is actually going to be health and mental wellness. Mm-hmm. So this is a great opportunity for us to learn about how we can work more together with the SDWG. Yeah. So over to you.
I hope that we can. I look forward to that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about local to global. Excuse me. Really the theme of mental well-being, which spans many chairmanships in the Arctic Council. I think we've had 5 chairships, actually, that have had mental well-being and suicide prevention as a priority, and started a long time ago, 2013 with the Canadian chairmanship. U.S. chairmanship brought in a new project also on mental well-being. The Finns also mental well-being, but that's where we started with a project called CREATES. I always get the acronym wrong. There's so many acronyms in the Arctic Council. Anyway, circumpolar resilience, engagement, and action through story, but I will call it CREATES. So it was a standalone project, and then 2 years later, with the shift of the chairship to Iceland, we brought in local to global. and creates is one component of that, and that's probably what I'll focus on the most. But I would say 2017 was a turning point at the SDWG, really on 3 fronts. And it started after a really very good and well-attended conference in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and Natan Obed attended. He's the president of the Inuit Tapiriit Kenatami. And he thought, great, this is a good conference, great research, important suicide prevention, mental well-being, but where's the community? And we were like, what? What do you mean? Where is the community? So, of course, they're involved in the research, but really digging into the community is what he challenged us to do, and I think we've done that really well to the benefit of the project work. And I think this is not uncommon with the Arctic Council, but we really struggled at the SDWG to try and figure out how to engage youth meaningfully. Like, you can't just pull in youth and say, tell us what you think. You really have to invest in making sure they understand the context and the work and the process and the governance structure. So it's not easy. We think it's easy until we try to do it, and then it's quite different. But 3 things I think that shifted in the SDWG after that time was, as I said, going from socioeconomic pure research to looking at direct engagement with community, and how do we do that, and what do we want from community. The second one was the critical importance, we all know it, of engaging Indigenous and Northern youth in the work regarding mental wellness and suicide prevention. And then the third one, I think maybe more subtle, but really the acknowledgement that we can't complete project work in 2 years. I mean, these are, sort of decades of investment and research and discussion and engagement and trying to figure out what the next step is. So I think those were 3 pretty big and very useful shifts in the SDWG. So local to global, L2G, yes, another acronym, is now in its 5th year at the Arctic Council. And I would also argue that it probably has had the most broad support across member states and permanent participants of any project I'm aware of at the SDWG for sure. I think there are a number of reasons for that. I'll talk a bit about it, but really Inuit Circumpolar Council was a huge driver of that project. So permanent participants absolutely taking our lead from them. Obviously, they're in community, makes the most sense, and you get the most meaningful work, I think, the most meaningful outcomes. So what is CREATES in L2G? One, involving youth in digital storytelling as a means of communicating and to talk about their priorities, their concerns, and ultimately build a sort of meaningful and broad-reaching youth network across the Circumpolar North. 2 was bringing in a technical team from University of Toronto, sort of videographers, mentors, and a psychiatrist, in fact, who lived in Nunavut for quite a few years and continues to work in Nunavut. And then also 3, the permanent participant organizations of the SDWG, and through them finding Indigenous youth to participate in these sessions. And generally 4 to 5 days for a session, 15 to 20 youth per session. That entailed building trust, hence it was 4 or 5 days, introducing the technology, although I would guess youth would say, actually, we taught you a whole lot about the technology, so that was useful for all of us. I'm a total neophyte, but and then choosing themes for the workshops, like hope, family, climate change, and then really these video stories that the youth built were all about their concerns, their anxieties, their experiences, and it spanned across every circumpolar country, which I think is extremely important. So we got a really powerful series of stories made by Indigenous and Northern youth, incredibly courageous, incredibly talented. I think that's the other thing, is as an old woman, we underestimate the power and creativity and thoughtfulness of youth. Youth goes up to sort of 55 years old, obviously, but in this instance. But really such wonderful work and videos that were amazing. And then there were a number of themes that emerged across all of these sessions, like climate anxiety, intergenerational trauma, loss of Indigenous languages, lack of health resources in community, as you mentioned, importance of family, being on the land. There were many more, but those were sort of the ones that stood out. And then the outcomes. I'm coming to the end, but the outcomes really of Local to Global and Creates. We had maybe 6 digital storytelling sessions across 4 countries. I would say 95% with Indigenous youth. We have over 45 incredible videos on www.projectcreates.com. Please check it out. Cup of coffee, amazing, so powerful. From that, we also got an Arctic Youth Wellbeing Network, so a sort of lasting network, global community for the youth that participated. And sessions are now, the last one was in Greenland, are now including Train the Trainer, so youth can carry on the work in their communities, and we've seen that in the Northwest Territories, particularly through the leadership of the Gwich'in Council. And then Creates an L2G alumni who, who bring that to their community, and I think that's meaningful. Not only that, they then volunteer to be mentors in subsequent Creates and L2G sessions, which is really, really great. So you have a growing group of youth to do this. So I think we learned a lot from L2G and Creates. I think it shifted the work of the SDWG, and we want to do more of that, lots of lessons, and hopefully will carry us into the future.
Thank you.
And working with you.
Thank you so much. And I actually think that there's so much that we could do together just on this topic to actually get this information into our communities of the Arctic Mayors Forum. So we'll have more to talk about. This could be a 3-hour session. But I am going to now introduce our last 3 panelists. Please come up and join me. The Mayor of Yellowknife, Rebecca Alty, the Mayor of Luleå, Karina Semelli, and Anya Maria Cascatolo from the Sami Council. And here we're just going to have a bit of conversation, but I do want to ask a couple of questions first. So, Rebecca, you're in the hot seat now. So, you have definitely had to deal with some emergencies in the last year. A really big one, a wildfire that sort of took your community completely off the grid for a while. The rest of the world watched in total horror, and you've come out as a real leader on how to deal with emergencies. So picking up on some of the themes of Ole Christian, how did this all go, and what can we learn from your experience in the Arctic Mayors Forum and feed into the work of the Arctic Council? It's a small question.
Yeah, for sure. So this is my 12th year on council, and the first 8 years, I guess, I don't think we really had to crack our emergency plan much. Then 2020 hit, and between 2020 and now, it's been activated 6 times. Wow. That was twice during COVID, once we were at a reception center. Wildfires. And so the day that we were being evacuated, that week there were a number of communities across the Northwest Territories. So by the end of that week, 70% of the Northwest Territories had been evacuated, and Yellowknife residents had to drive 18 hours to get to the closest reception center. So it was one of the most jurisdictionally challenging evacuations to do. There was, the municipality, there was the territorial government, there was the Alberta government where people were going, there was the 7 municipalities there was BC, there was Manitoba, there was Whitehorse and the Yukon. So it was quite convoluted. Right now we're in the process of doing an after-action assessment. Mm-hmm. And so what an after-action assessment is it documents what should have happened, what did happen, what went well, and what needs to be improved. And so that's really important work as we are approaching the next season of wildfires. We can sit here and just cross our fingers, or we can be prepared. One of the challenges of being prepared, though, is at the municipal level in Canada, 3 orders of government: municipal, territorial, and federal. the municipal government's the poorest level of government. So every dollar of taxes that you give or remit to the government, 10 cents goes to the municipality. And so relying strictly on the municipalities to do the preparation is challenging. So for this upcoming wildfire season, we can either be prepared, and it would cost about an 8% tax increase to residents, or the cost of running the arenas for a whole year, or we can sit back, have our fingers crossed, and if anything happens, the federal government will step in and they'll pay for the cost of the wildfires, which last year cost us $11 million plus, an incalculable mental health and the number of businesses that were impacted. So the prevention is really important, and as a nation, Canada had the worst wildfire season across the country, so not only in the Northwest Territories. And so I do think we need to spend this upcoming year talking as a country about what can municipalities do, what can provinces and territories do, and what can we do as the national government to make sure that we're all prepared, because we are a very large country, but with a very small population, and so really making sure that we have the resources when needed to go to the right places. So stay tuned on our after action assessment and all the recommendations to come. But it was a challenging year that we hope to never have to repeat. But today it's 4 degrees Celsius in Yellowknife. The average should be -20, -30. So I don't think it's also hard to prepare in this changing Arctic. So,
Valid, totally valid points. And I guess EPPR would be maybe interested in having a look at the after-action report that comes out of Yellowknife. But Anya-Marie, I want to pull you in now. You were just part of the emerging leaders this last week. I'm sure you're still processing a lot of what happened there. I heard from a colleague of yours who said it was really amazing, but a lot happened. Did prevention and preparedness and response in small communities come up in any of your conversations? And what is your perspective from the Sami Council on how we should work a little bit better together?
Yeah, thank you. So I just spent the last 5 days together with a very great group of people, the emerging leaders, traveling from Bodø to Lofoten to Tromsø. In this weather, so that was interesting. And I'm just really having so much fun together with that group. We have been learning about search and rescue work in Bodø. We were given a presentation from the JRCC Joint Rescue Coordination Center in Bodø, and learned about these topics, and learned the definition of crisis, that is a situation where local capacity is overwhelmed. And we expect that to be very common in many Arctic communities, that if something bad happens, most communities would be overwhelmed. So that is what we need to prepare for, and we must really stress the importance of collaboration and communication among several actors. And especially leaders need to be proactive in this work, and leaders on the broad sense of society. And it's important to raise awareness about emergency preparedness among local people. And what I found interesting is how we use local resources. So when something happens, accidents, emergencies, we have a network of actors and organizations who are prepared or are continuously working on this by practicing. But we also have people who might never been preparing for anything, and it's important to think to identify those who might be needed in an emergency. For example, those who have the knowledge, the extensive knowledge of a particular area, hunters, fishers, reindeer herders who might be needed in emergencies. And that happens especially in the Sami context, that reindeer herders are often mobilized in crisis. And then it's important to practice also that, so you are able to coordinate also them when something happens. So yeah, preparedness on all sides of society. I would like to come with an example on something that has happened in my local area the recent years. In the Finnmark area, we've had a grazing crisis happening many times the last year, where due to extreme weather events and climate changing, there's extreme amounts of snow or heavy layers of ice, so the reindeer are not able to dig through to find food. So that means that herders must work day and night in order to give them emergency feeding, and in these events the reindeer herders got emergency feeding help from the government, but also it took quite a toll on them, on their families, on the communities, and also then the Sami health services were needed and had to coordinate to give mental health help in these situations. Yeah, it has a long name, but I would like to mention the Sami Norwegian National Advisory Unit on Mental Health and Substance Use. It's a long name, so I'll just use songs. They had to put up emergency number services so people could call. So those are some examples of what is happening and will happen again in Sápmi due to changing climates.
That's a really great example, Anja, and I think it really shows how these things can't be dealt with in isolation, that things have to be looked at in a really very holistic way, and that the smaller the community, the more holistic the approach has to be. So it's not okay you can't just separate out, this role is for you and that role is for you, because in small communities, many people wear many different hats. So this is a really, really great example. Thank you for that. Karina, that means I want to turn to you, and we're talking about how communities are impacted by mental wellness of their residents. But I'd like to flip this question around and ask you, what are some of the positive things that can happen and have impact on communities, and what in particular are you doing in Luleå to include your young people and also take care of their mental health and well-being?
Yeah. And it's about the same thing that we've all been talking about, because it's about inclusion and making the change together with people. About 10 years ago, I was a school politician in Luleå, and we had consultations with our national minorities once every half year. And these were really bad meetings, because our 5 national minorities, the Sami people are one of them, they were there telling us that their right to their language, to their culture, were not included in our school systems. And then on the other side were my organization with everyone hired in school and saying, no, we can't do what they're asking us for. So we decided that we can't continue to have these meetings when we're like shouting at each other. So we decided we need to make vision together about how to do this. And everyone was telling me that it's impossible. They don't understand, they don't know the Swedish school law, they don't understand our needs. Well, they are not even speaking Sami in their family, why should we try to help them? So that was like the debate when we started the work. What happened was 1 year after, we were actually agreed on a vision about how to do it, what to do in the first place, the second place, the third place, together with our minorities and the Sápmi youth. And this was like young parents that were wanting their kids to learn their language in the schools. Because as in many other countries, we have a lost generation. I'm one of the lost generation. I'm not Sápmi, but I'm from the Tornedalen, another minority people of Sweden, where you couldn't, my parents didn't think I should learn the language or the culture because it was not good enough. I should learn Swedish, and that's what happened to many of our minorities. So these were people who were young people who wanted to be proud of their culture and their heritage, and they couldn't. And our solution was to do it together with them and find the solutions. And the funny thing is that what I thought before that they wanted was not what I was asking for. Because what started up was that they wanted like a schedule for how many hours they should talk the language. And then we said, okay, we can do that if it's important. Then it showed up that was not what was important. The important thing was that all the teachers were talking the language all the time to the kids. So we found the solutions, and that made them prouder. Today they are very proud, and we're actually one of the best municipalities in the city working with kids and school and culture and languages for the national minorities. But we need to do it together because we do not know the solutions. And that is also the challenge in an international, national and local and community-based work, because you need to include all levels. You can't just say like, well, if the state calls me and then we're okay, like talk to us and then we're good enough. We have to talk to the people who actually has the problem. And most often you want to you get your reports, I get plenty of statistics about how are people feeling, how long did they live, how many suicides do we have. I know the statistics, and then you start to think of what they need. And that is most often not what they need. When you go out and talk to people, they need something else. They mostly see something else that's the most important things. So you have to do the whole trip all around, and that is a challenge for the municipalities, I would say.
Yeah. It's about finding the solutions together. It's an iterative process, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And also not be that afraid to try things.
Yeah.
We actually had the statistics came in that young people in Luleå, they feel alone. That's we have mental health problems, and the feeling of loneliness was one of the big issues. That you did not see that you were included in society. And one of our co-workers said, can't we have a small campaign? I read about a research report about saying hi to people is important. So we have a campaign. We had it in October on the buses and sent it out to schools, say hi to your neighbor. When you see someone in the street, say hi. Because that means that you will feel included and you will say hi. We had a small movie, someone walking in the streets and saying hi, and the person were surprised and then moved on and said hi to the next one and the next one. And that got international media. Saying hi was obviously a big thing that people did not include. But it was quite easy. And one of my coworkers who were can't we try? Yes, of course we can. So there are a lot to do, and that creativity about what to do, we need to find that and make it easy to try things, to find the solution. And they're about loneliness, they're about not feeling included in the society.
Yeah. Morten, I'm going to bring you back in, and then we're going to go. I know Anja Maria would like to jump into the conversation. So with the Arctic Council's deep history and including Indigenous people at the table with the states, and also not a new focus, but a long focus on youth, what do you hope will be the Norwegian chairship's legacy on youth and mental health to take us into the next chairship?
Well, we've heard examples here today of how consecutive chairships or chairmanships have been working on this issue, which is so important. So we are not inventing the wheel. This issue has been around forever, probably. But we need to reinforce, strengthen, build on all the good work that has been done. I was happy to a gathering you organized in October last year in Iceland, at the margins of the Arctic Circle. You had a lot of mayors coming together, and I remember we discussed and I introduced our thinking regarding, at least for the Norwegian chairship, to put a high priority on mental health. And the resonance and the interest from the mayors, because I think I've been in local politics many years myself, and I know every community, every city, wherever it is struggling with issues of mental health.
Yeah.
And with the lack of health services, which you often have in small communities, remote communities, it becomes, you're vulnerable. And there are, hearing the stories of young people from Arctic communities, which I was able to do this summer, coming together we were sitting in a Lavvo
Yeah.
huge Sami tent. There were people coming from all across Arctic telling stories about how mental health issues was affecting their families. It's very personal stories, but it's strong stories, and you will be affected by it. But how we can take that into something concrete, something real. So I'm so pleased now that the Ministry of Health in Norway have committed to work on this in the Arctic region. Last fall, just a few months back, they announced what we call fresh money. Not just duplicate, using money one more time, existing money, for projects in the Arctic on these issues, which can support the chairship priorities, which we can use for concrete projects within the Arctic. So, that's really important in order to give support. We're looking at the international example, how, of course, the Arctic is unique somehow, and how the climate change, extreme weather, but it's happening also other places. And Norway, we work on these issues in the Himalayas and other, and we just bring knowledge. There are examples and which we can use. So I don't want to put a prediction on how far we can achieve, but I'm certain that the next chairship will also carry on. Next year at the Arctic Frontiers, I have been promised and told that mental health, will be a very important topic. So we look forward to go deeper into the topic. That hopefully, launch some project, building on existing activities, and in discussion with the local communities, and not least the youth in those communities, how we can be relevant. Because for us, sitting and designing a project and activity which doesn't feel relevant for the people it's affected, that's maybe of no use. So it should be designed with those voices around the table. So that's what we're trying to achieve. Maybe easier said than done, but there are some good examples to build on here.
Absolutely.
And before I conclude, just want to say, when listening to Ole Christian and Sarah, all the good work from the working groups, this is just a perfect example why we need the working groups in the Arctic Council to be operational. Okay.
I will not dispute you on that, given my history with the working groups of the Arctic Council. But I really liked what you said about fresh money. That's great. I like clean money, and I also would just like to say that, Arctic Mayors Forum, I think, is a great partner to help you achieve some of your goals for next year. So we will definitely be in touch with you about that. But Anya, I'm going to let you jump back in. You had a comment, so
Yeah. I would like to comment on something Sarah raised. You asked how to engage with youth meaningfully earlier, and something the Sami Council has a great with is to work directly with Sami youth organizations, for example. Sami youth organizations have the past years been working a lot with the topic of mental health, and something that they have raised is that there is a challenge that a lot of the studies are being done on Sami youth mental health, for example, are national studies, and they won't really give the best results unless they are actually cross-border. So this is really important that it has a cross-border focus. And then we need to be working with youth from different countries. Also, it is very important that we are listening when youth actually have ideas, because it is challenging when you have a lot of things to do, and then you are invited, and someone says, "Okay, now come with ideas." Well, might not be the best method, but so it's important that we act when youth have ideas. For example, I got an email from some Sami youth saying, "Hey, we want to do this project with Inuit youth from Greenland." Great. Then we must act, because youth organizations, youth groups, they are in school, they are in jobs, so they don't really have maybe the capacity to coordinate this. So then we can be those who can provide support with funding and coordination and helping with applying for money and those kinds of things. So when youth are coming with ideas, we need to really act on them and help them realize their ideas.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Ole Christian, I'm going to give the floor to you, and then I'm going to turn to the audience. So please have your questions ready, and we will take some questions from the audience. So over to you, Ole Christian.
Yeah, it's just a follow-up of two of the interventions here. Morten mentioned Arctic Council and the uniqueness related to that also indigenous people are equal and are around the table. And I see the benefit in our working group, and I assume that is the benefit for all working groups, that we learn, as we did this morning, about the wireline fires and the knowledge from indigenous people. But, and Morten also mentioned that it's important to be operational. And just example from Norway, through Norwegian meetings with the Norwegian EPPR team, we had meetings. We also bring that knowledge to our team, what we learned from EPPR, from Canada, from Greenland, from other areas. As an example, the indigenous knowledge related to oil spill response, which is my area of expertise. And we in my organization, we have now, last 2 weeks ago, it was signed an agreement with the northern municipalities or intermunicipal organizations where they also to strengthen the preparedness in that in the area, and that also includes indigenous knowledge and indigenous expertise. That is something we haven't done before. So that is a kind of using the experience from Arctic Council, bringing it down to the local level to the national authorities. So that is one example of the importance of sharing knowledge and learn from indigenous people. And there are also many examples, also through EPPR on search and rescue. The tragic accident happened in Norwegian aircraft, military aircraft crashed in this tallest mountain in Sweden, and where also indigenous people were involved and maybe not thought about. And so that is also a learning point from on the search and rescue side. So there are many good examples. Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there any questions from the audience? I have many, so if not, but would anyone like to ask our panel a question? I can't see, so I'm
Great.
Yes.
I'm Karin Buhmann from Copenhagen Business School. I'm also the lead of a research project funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers, where we're looking at meaningful stakeholder engagement, how to create meaningful stakeholder engagement, in particular around actually the green transition, but also other aspects. And I found that what we really want to do with this project is we want to try to understand the experiences of local communities across the Arctic. So we've been doing quite a bit of field work within the limited funds so far in Iceland and Greenland, and in Atlantic and Pacific Canada so far. We still have to do more in Norway. The question to you, my question to you is, do you collaborate with researchers? Do you get a lot of requests from scholars? Because there's so much research going on these like bottom-up perspectives or approaches on stakeholder engagement or rights holder engagement with Arctic communities. I think we found it was a little bit difficult actually to penetrate into individual municipalities and to speak to like mayors like yourself. So I'm actually curious to know, do you get a lot of requests from scholars? How do you deal with them? For people like us, my colleague here, Mark Stoddart from Memorial University in Canada, what would be the best way for us to reach out to people like you and to get a sense of what actually happens at the community level? Because without that knowledge, our knowledge production will not be very effective.
I see vigorous nodding to my left, so I don't think I need to pick somebody. Go ahead, Karina. And then I think Rebecca would like to jump in
and
too.
we would love to cooperate, and that is important. And I must say, just about the inclusionness is the most difficult part. I mean, we have a university in Luleå, we cooperate closely with them, and we cooperate with many universities, but often it's about a topic. Like now we're working on mental health care, and do you want to cooperate with us on that? And that's quite easy. Now we're working on how schools should educate in math, and then we cooperate on that. But when it's about inclusiveness and how to involve people in processes, and especially processes that are a little bit difficult and will affect people in negative ways, there's not, at least not in my municipality, there's no one in charge of that. I mean, there's someone in charge of schools and there's someone in charge of roads, but like getting people involved, and then it just, they don't know where to fit it in, right, actually. So right now, that's one of my priorities. And I mean, I have 7,000 people working in my municipality. I do not know what everyone does, but I know what I can ask for. And one of my questions is always, how do I know that the people that are involved in this and will be affected of this decision, are they included in the process? Or has someone been like sitting inside their room and writing a proposal for me, and then no one knows what's going on or likes it, or maybe we're solving the wrong problem. So I would be happy to cooperate, just let me know, and we are trying to cooperate as much as we can. And you said the green transition, we work very, very intense with the green transition, and people living in Luleå will be very, very much affected in the coming years. They are right now, and that will grow. And that is one of the important things for me, to make sure that people are involved and understand what is going on, and also telling us what is important. Maybe now I have a long answer, but I actually, as a school politician, made some stupid mistakes, like closing schools and solving problems people didn't have, because I thought we had them. And I learned a lot from that, about getting people included in the process early enough, and knowing that I can't describe the problem and the solution without people. I can't even describe the problem. I can describe my problem. For me, that is a problem. And then I talk to people, and if they don't have the same problem, it is not a problem. Then I should not solve it. But often they are smarter than me, because when I have meetings with people, they are like, oh, but no, not just like you say it, but this is the problem. And then it's like, aha, that we can solve. Good thing I asked them, otherwise I would be solving this, and no one actually cared about that. So we need to work much closer, and in Sweden we have a problem that no one's really responsible for that.
Rebecca?
Yeah, we're bombarded with requests. It can feel like a zoo. People come in, want to study us, and then they take all that data and leave, never to let us know the results. And so there is a need for research in the north, but to pick up on Karina's point is, a lot of researchers come from the south, tell us this is the problem that we're here to research, without being like, is that your main problem? The other challenge is that we're just literally and figuratively fighting fires a lot, and so I can appreciate that people want to come in and talk about stuff, but I'm like, I'm so busy right now, I've just really got to deal with this. And forest fires from last year, of course everybody wants to come and do a case study on this, and I'm like, we're actually just really busy doing this after action assessment, and we've got to prepare for this 2024. Appreciate your interest in this, and would love to talk to you about it in 2025. So, yeah, there's got to be, and there has been some work. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada in the Northwest Territories, I think it's through the NWT Association of Communities, that they actually did ways to incorporate the TRC's recommendations into your research, so to be able to be more respectful of research. But it is a challenge. I have research proposals coming across my desk every week, and so just trying to fit it all into our little tiny team.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sarah, you might have some good input and experience here dealing with some sensitive topics in communities. So do you have some input on this?
I mean, I guess a few points. One, at a higher level, Inuit Tipiriit Kanatami, national Inuit political organization, actually has published ethical research practices. So, I mean, I think some of the indigenous groups other than ITK around the country have done the same. There are practices to be followed if you want to go into community. I think we're very lucky that we have 6 permanent participant organizations at the table. So in terms of accessing community, we have a wonderful way to do that. Although I still think we sort of face the challenge of there are 10 youth who are always on that list. And you really have to figure out a way to really expand that pool so that you get diverse views from various youth who live in totally different and distinct communities across Canada's Arctic. And we work quite a bit with scholars. One of them is in the audience, actually. And our expectation is that they are well connected to community. And I mean, in the case of Canada, Indigenous communities. And that makes a huge difference in terms of collaborative research, co-development. So I think we have sort of, those 3, I don't know if I answered the question, but my thoughts anyway. Thank you.
Thanks. Another question from the audience? State Secretary, did you have anything that you'd like to jump in with? Not a comment would be more than welcome. There's a mic coming to you.
Yeah.
I just had a comment because as a former mayor, I used to work a lot with the preparedness situation. And preparedness demands population, and population both demands and creates labor, and which demands and creates education. And this circle is quite important for us in the ministry to develop. So we are quite often now these days criticized for just picking on the small activities. But in the framework of the safety politics and the defense politics, I would like to mention a comment from the Chief of Defense, Eirik Kristoffersen, from a conference a few weeks ago, where he told that the defense politics and the safety politics are demanding the local communities. So the small politics is quite crucial for the larger politics. Both kindergarten schools and healthcare is quite important to provide services for the labor in the defense. And we want to have population and settlements throughout the whole country, not just in what we call Nordsjøturnus, North Sea work hours.
Yeah.
You can't create good local communities 6 weeks at a time. You need this long-term settlement. So I think the pointing out from the Chief of Defense is quite important to remember when we are talking about the small politics, the schools and the kindergartens and the healthcare and the cultural activities and the business development in the small communities, because settlement throughout the country, that's our safety, actually.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I know that in the Arctic Mayors Forum, we talk a lot about the sort of attractiveness and retention sort of basket of things. But in that basket comes a lot of these other things. And it's about societal innovation, and it's about inclusion, and it's about making sure that you're answering the right questions. So thank you for that, and we really appreciate you being here with us this evening. So we do have time for one last question, if there is, and if not, I'm going to ask for I'm going to ask Anya to do a bit of a wrap-up of our session, and then we will close. So last chance for any questions? Okay, Anya, I'm going to turn to you now for some final reflections and a bit of a wrap-up on how we might work together to, living in a changing Arctic, how might we do that together better?
Yes, thank you for letting me wrap up. As a wrap-up, I was thinking I'm going to revisit some of the takeaways from the Emerging Leaders program. This year's topic was coexistence. So we talked a lot about coexistence and really realized the need to define it when we talk about it. Many of us had very different understandings of it and what it meant. And we often hear the word when we are talking about sustainable development in the Arctic. Is coexistence just existing at the same time? Is that enough? Or do we want to co-create the future together with the processes and mechanisms to amplify each other? We need to make sure it's an existence where everyone's needs are met. When talking about the development of our societies, some of the things we talked about is that instead of only focusing on finding new, innovative solutions based on Western methods, we can use existing indigenous frameworks and actually incorporating indigenous practices in government systems, because there is so much knowledge, and not only knowledge, but ways of seeing and being that guides us in how to live meaningful lives that don't harm the environment. And when I asked my fellow emerging leaders what they had learned through these last days, some of them said that they were more aware of how big differences there are between the different regions of the Arctic, because there are really big differences, but also so many similarities, and many of the same challenges. And then it's crucial that we work together across countries, regions, municipalities, cultures, with problem solving, because there is so much to learn from each other, to be better prepared in the future. And then it is very smart and very important to start while we are young. So we have our whole lives together to build strong relationships across the Arctic.
Well, thank you for that, Anya. And I think that we on the stage would very much welcome that partnership with young people. Both, I know, our Arctic Mayors Forum, and we've heard from Morten that the Arctic Council is also extremely committed to that. So thank you for that. And I would just like to say that I think one of the things that I will take away from this session is that we actually have a lot of common ground in a lot of places where we, the two organizations of the Arctic Council and the Arctic Mayors Forum, can work together. So I'd just like to say thank you to my co-organizers. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Nina and Emmanuel and Christina and Jessica in helping create this session and doing a lot of work on it. Thank you, Anya, Ole Christian, Sarah, Morten, Karina, Rebecca, for being here and taking part in this discussion. So thank you for joining us tonight as well. So a round of applause for our speakers. And State Secretary, thank you.
Great. I would like to talk.